Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swiz, here to talk round 14 team discussion, footy chat, and answer the questions that you guys have all sent in this week. As always, thank you so much for all the questions and the feedback. We really love the support out there. And continue to support us through all our channels, YouTube, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, and on Twitter, Supercoach Insider 100, Swiz 26 for me directly. On to last week, 1927 was my overall score, which put me up 3,000 places to 2788 overall. Overall, mostly pretty happy with that. Brought in merit. So I managed to avoid Parish. It was sort of a bit of a toss-up during the day of how I wanted to go there. I'm not kind of disappointed about the direction I went there, especially if Parish is going to be injured. There's been no word about it so far. We'll kind of continue to monitor that. But that extra cash, I thought would allow me to do some things this week. The other in was Charlie Dean. I kind of wanted to have some cash. So I brought him in, hoping that he's going to play some games with Collingwood's defensive issues. That extra defender, I think, will help them. So sort of banking a bit on Chris's information there. But it does look like there could be a couple of debuts, and one that has been confirmed from Carlton is Durden comes in. Unfortunately, Marchbank has had another setback with injury. Poor guy, just can't take a break. So Sam Durden is in, and out is Chera injured. Marchbank also, which means they've kept the sub from last week in. For the Tigers, in Tommy Lynch out, Martin and Soldo has been dropped. So Dusty, think roughly 12% of sides have him at the moment. So that'll affect obviously their teams, and it's been a bit of a shame because I know a few people, actually a lot of people like watching him, but he just hasn't had the best season. We did discuss that earlier in the year that Dusty probably wasn't going to be as relevant this season, and it sort of panned out that way. Overall, heading in the right direction. Should have the field 18 this week with the changes I'm looking at, and I'll talk more through them as we're going through the questions. There's some couple forward options I'm looking at. Max Gawn has obviously thrown a spanner in the works. We did do a big talk when I had my podcast before with Benny about the different options for Gawn. But I'll go straight into the questions so we're not doubling up, and then we'll go from there. So Richmond Forum will start off first this week. And we had from Matty Grates, what did you ask there, Matty? Gawn out, so naturally Gawn, a big question there. English moved to Ruck, Libba in the forward, easy. And then he's asked question, is it Libba or would you think Luke Jackson could go huge? So the Ruck's very interesting this week. We discussed with Ben the main options, which is obviously English. If you want that forward Ruck, in a perfect world, you'd prefer English in your forward line, but we discussed the idea of having English in your forward line, getting rid of Gawn and bringing in, say, a Riley O or a Nank or someone like that. Naturally, if you're just going to do a side swap, English is the best option. Then it comes down to, do you think, if you don't have the money for English, which you should because Gawn to English is a direct swap, but if you're trying to do other things in your team, is it can Nankervis or Riley O score more points? What would Darcy need to score? 11 points more per week in the games he's got left than what Nankervis and Riley O. So we discussed about, so if Nankervis and Riley O were to score 100, average 100 every game for the rest of the year, Darcy would have to score 111 just to match that. So Darcy's obviously the better choice, but it's not playing this week. So it all comes down to what your setup is as well. If you're an overall player, your head-to-head player, how many do you have on field this week? If you've already got 18, then the extra ruck's not going to make a difference to you because Nankervis scores 100, your rookie scores 50, you're making 50 points this week. So all of these things come into effect depending on how your team is set up. So, number one option would be English, and then it depends if you've got 17 players, how you go, if it's an Anchor or O'Brien, or if you wait 1 week and get Darcy. The other options then come in if you've got Darcy Cameron. Do you move him into the midfield, into the rucks, which is exactly what I'm looking at doing. So Gorm will go out, Darcy Cameron becomes my ruck 2, and I'll keep playing Darcy Cameron for now. And I'm actually looking at spending Gorm's money in either the forward line or the midfield. So options there, as Matty said, is Libba. So of the dogs, with Bailey Smith's obvious indiscretion with the drug saga, and everyone's got a different opinion about that, and that's why I've just got to put Footy Chat on the name of this pod, because it's one thing, like from a personal point of view, I'm not a big fan of drugs, especially in sport, but I understand the mental health and different mental health that people go through. So I get how some people think it's just a cop out, and I completely understand people's view there, but then different people handle life in life situations differently, so I can completely understand how people can get caught up in not just drugs, but it's alcohol or other substances, or even other behaviours when dealing with mental health. So I'm not going to sit there and judge, but at the same time, being such a role model, it kind of puts a different spin on the whole thing, because it's not just your general person. Bailey Smith's obviously very highly followed on social media, so there needed to be some sort of strong what am I looking for them punishment that would set the example for the the rest of the community out there. But then I guess that community all changes depending on what your views of drugs are. It's an interesting one. I think the 2 weeks, I heard he was trying to appeal it because he kind of pleaded guilty to it and wanted a week off. I think he should just cop the fair 2 weeks and move on and continue to get better. And that's all I think everybody wants in society, is everybody in the best mental health space you can be. So with him out for those couple of games, Libba definitely is probably the better option going into the midfield. It's just then obviously what happens when Bailey Smith comes back. Bonts had that niggle all year. You expect him to still play some forward time, but he's still good enough to go 105, 110. Does have a break even of 132. So if you don't have Bont, it would be Libba. You could wait 1 week on Bont if you could afford both, or if you're kind of looking a bit more long term. But if you're more worried about points on field, Bont or Libba, both really good options. I think Bont's the better long term, but I think Libba's definitely got the Bailey Smith role inside. And I would expect starting midfield to be English, Dunkley, Libba, and probably Treloar with McRae outside, but it wouldn't surprise me if McRae goes in, and then Bont will have his time around. So trading him and bringing in Libba or Bont, that's great. Luke Jackson, not as strong on that one. It's still a young fella, and it could work out to be a bit like Darcy Cameron. Like we've seen him, we've seen Rowan Marshall. The difference with them is their size, and also like Darcy Cameron's a seasoned player. He's been in the system a long time. Luke Jackson's still a young player. And when you're playing sole ruck and getting beaten up by those bigger rucks each week, does take a bit of a toll on your body. In saying that, I could eat my words very easily there. Luke Jackson could come out and go bang, but it's kind of then what do you do with Luke Jackson in 4 weeks, 5 weeks time when Gawn comes back. You got to remember one of those weeks is the bye, so if it is 5 weeks, it becomes 4. If it's 4, it becomes 3. And I guess it all depends on Melbourne's form and how quickly they start. If they win games, they might take their time bringing Gawn back. If they're losing more games like they are at the moment with some tough fixtures, they might race Gawn back earlier. So I'm not as big fan on that Luke Jackson one. Peter K, my dilemma is Parker or Libba. I don't know enough about each player or team. Both are playing midfield. I would go Parker just because the Swans are more in contention than what the Doggies are. The Doggies are fighting for that last position. And it could be 2 positions depending on how Collingwood and St Kilda go on the run home. And that's sort of no disrespect to them, but I think the 6 higher teams are more established with their fixture. So I prefer Parker, but it wouldn't surprise me if Libba scored the same as Parker. But he's got obviously more midfielders taking that percentage of the pie, where Parker, it's him and Mills as the main two in there, and then obviously then you got your Florence and Rowbottoms and that, but don't take as many points off. So that answers that one. To Adrian, thoughts on Duncan trading at Brody to Bont? Is that a good move? If you've got another player to trade, that's probably the better option. But yeah, Brody to Bont, you're not going to probably go wrong there. It's going to be Bont should probably go maybe 5 points more or something. The only issue there is, are you burning a trade just for the same output? We don't have enough data on Fife come back affecting Brody. Brody did play, nearly the entire game in the midfield. It's just that he didn't play much to game time at 67%, kind of what Brody does. So it's not terrible because obviously, as we talked before about that whole Darcy versus Nank, Bont's got that extra week. Brody's not going to outscore Bont an extra 11 points on the run home. So it's not a bad move. If you've got a Butters or if you've got somebody else, I would rather that. But yeah, if you want to go Brody to Bont, it's fine. Thoughts on Duncan? Not as strong about Duncan. I think if you're going to go the Geelong forward, it's Jeremy Cameron, and that's exactly who I'm on. West Coast twice and North Melbourne. I think you can just have field days. He had a field day recently against the Bulldogs. It really annoyed it was a 150 and not like a 100 because I wanted him about 20k cheaper. But that's the way it goes sometimes. To Abdul, tell the Supercoach gods Abdul that Abs Magic loves him. Yeah, good on you, Abdul. Not a question, but if people chase points this week and ignore Shrek as he ain't playing, they will lose the points they gained in the long run. Yeah, so Shrek, he's talking about Darcy, and that's where it comes down to. If you want Darcy in the long run, if your team already has 18 players playing this week, Darcy is the better move for you. To Deborah, Himmelberg or Libba, I'm actually going to lean to Himmelberg, but that's a short term. That comes down to how many trades you've got left. If you are bleeding trades, get on Libba. If you have, at least probably 7, 8, 9, even double figures definitely. Himmelberg goes 80 this week. He's making 60k. He goes 100. It's getting up to that 70, 75k, and also helps his break even for the following week, where at the moment I think he's projected to go 30k up. That could become 40k. All of a sudden, 430 becomes a 550 player in 2 weeks. Jack Steele is reportedly meant to be back next week. Couple of games back, Himmelberg to Jack Steele could be a fantastic trade. Even so, Himmelberg later on to Gawn. So it does open up some options. It's a quick cash cow, and Himmelberg playing the Dogs. Dogs forward line's not that great. You can see him taking intercept marks. And best case scenario, if Himmelberg continues to go 90, 100, what a great F7, and the possibility of him picking up dual position come round 17, 18. So yeah, I'm going to go Himmelberg on that one. To Brad, and well done to those who got Himmelberg in last week. That was a fantastic move. The 347, I think it was, that brought him in. Brad, thoughts on putting Darcy Cameron at R2? Yes, that's what I'm doing. From the forward line and spending the cash elsewhere. Absolutely, Brad, 100%. Abdul, again, can you mention to Ben about getting Cogs last week was the right choice? Yes, well done for those who brought Cogs back in and that. But, soft game, North Melbourne. He was always going to score well. Just, the 3 goals. He probably should have kicked 5 and that. He could have really hurt anybody who traded him out. Well done there. Steve, do we still trade out Zorko? Yeah, Steve's been asking me about this a bit this week. It depends on what else you have to do. If you've got Gawn to worry about, then it's a different story. But yeah, even if you can, unfortunately Zorko, his form's been absolutely terrible the last 3 weeks. And add on to that, his price has completely dropped. So there might be, now that Gawn's out, you could possibly do Gawn, Zorko out. What's Gawn? 609. Zorko, I think, is low 400s. So there is a world that, you could upgrade a Zorko type. No, let's say you put 120 on that to get to Dawson. You take 120 off Gawn. You're looking at about 480. Well, you could actually go through a loophole for the Ruck and bring in Himmelberg into your forward line and build your cash there and Zorko up to a sort of Dawson type. That's one way of possibly doing it. if you need a ruck, hopefully you've got cash. That would be the perfect world, and then you could still get a decent ruck like a Darcy or a, as we talked about, like a Rolio who's a bit cheaper, and then still upgrading Zorko. But yeah, unfortunately, mate, I think he is a move. That's one that Benny in particular has got wrong. And to Lee, is Himmelberg worth putting in, and thoughts on bringing Cogs back in? And Lee, yep. Deborah's replied yes and yes. Yeah, I've got no problems with that. Cogs not as much, because I think there's the Bulldogs available now. Cogs is playing midfield again, so I think McVeigh's backed him in there. Yeah, he's going to be up there as one of those top forwards, but if you've got the money and you've got the opportunity to bring in a Bont instead, absolutely. But yeah, bringing in Himmelberg and Cogs, not a problem, but they're not going to score as well as they did last week. And that's the thing, they've played North Melbourne now. You want to look at the teams that haven't played North Melbourne, and that's where I'm really big on Geelong. I think the Crows have got, was it West Coast or North twice? They've got one of them twice. No, they've got North twice and West Coast once. So that's where we did suggest, if you're like ranked 10, 15, 20,000, even further back, why not bring in Tex Walker? Roll the dice, play on that roller coaster, because he could go massive. And what's the worst case happens? Like he goes like 70, 80, you're still going to be ranked 20, 30,000. Like, why not throw the dartboard at somebody like him? So yeah, no, there are a couple options. Look at those fixtures in particular, and those who are playing North Melbourne West Coast, even Essendon, because they are leaking points. North Melbourne had, GWS aren't that good. They're obviously down the bottom of the ladder. They scored 2,000 Supercoach last week, which is just massive. So there's something to definitely consider there. Over to Twitter, Nathan's replied, Darcy the GOAT. No problems again. I think Darcy will be popular for some people. Just a shame he has the bye this week. But if you're a head-to-head league player, go out and get Darcy. And Connor and I had a bit of a discussion about that on Twitter. But that comes down to what you play for. Abdul, Supercoach, Ruck, forwards, and Abdul's everywhere this week. In the top 100 will be more unique now. Most of the top 500 chasing points will probably put English in the ruck and get Bont forward. Rob Nank will be popular too, as they are playing this week. Shrek with the bye might be overlooked. Yeah, so that, again, as I said earlier, it depends where you are ranked. If you're one of these people who are ranked in especially the top 100, you kind of want to play safe. You want to play as safe as late as you possibly can, and then sort of leave a couple of trades up your sleeve for the last couple of rounds where, let's just say, last round for overall, we've got round 23, North Melbourne Suns, and the Tigers are playing the Bombers, Geelong are playing West Coast. So in a perfect world, if you are looking like you're going to be up that top 50, top 100, you want to leave 2 trades. Perfect world, you've got a boost left and 3 trades, and you want to smash Geelong or Gold Coast players that week, particularly Geelong, who could just absolutely smash West Coast at home, and that could be the difference, where a point of difference that nobody else has, and that could be your Duncan then. It could be a Tom Hawkins, someone like that, where not many people own, especially not many people own in that top 100. That's where you can catch up that 200, 300, 400 points. By bringing 2 or 3 of them in, and you just hope that the guys that everybody else has, that you're trading, or hopefully the cash that you've made in these last few weeks, you are able to upgrade a bench or a loophole option, and then you can do some funky stuff to catch up those points. Where if you're further back, that's where you're trying to make some of those moves now, because why not? And if you're a head-to-head player, well, it just comes down to fixture and where you are on the ladder. If you're top 4, you're probably playing more conservative. If you're trying to make the 8, then you're trying to make some risks, and you're having a look at your fixtures coming up and going, okay, there's people I can beat in round 16, 17, 18. Okay, let's have a look at who's playing there, and there might be a certain team that's getting on a run. For example, I think Richmond's last 3 games are soft, so if you're playing Supercoach finals, that might be, if you know you're going to be there, you might look at somebody who's from Richmond. In the middle, trying to think, I know the Crows have a bit of a soft run there, and we've talked about them, so you might be looking at it might be a Keys or somebody a bit different as a pod that you can bring in, which you know is going to go really well for those 3 or 4 weeks, get you those league wins, and then come finals, reassess. To Cliffo, good man Cliffo. Primos you think are worth sideways in trading to finish the year, assuming trades to play with. Keen for your thoughts on Track, Butters, Short, and Brody. Yeah, great question, Cliffo. Okay, so Track, unfortunately, he's not. He's really bottomed out. He was the one when I was talking to Ben about trying not to trade because A, there's those extra points that with Gore not being there, but B, he's it's just the money. Like he's completely bottomed out now. So like, who are you going to trade to? And unfortunately, I'm the wrong swearing here. If I get back to Classic. And like at 487, and the idea that you might not have any cash at all in your midfield. We've got what are our options here? I've got there's just so many not good ones that I'd want. Probably what's Tom Mitchell 475? What did we say? Petrarca is 487. So Tommy Mitchell, but he's got the bye this week, so again that's not a great one. Oh, it's so bad. Like Jed Anderson, but he's got the bye, and I still don't like that. There's so many that got. This is why I don't like, unless you're probably trading to a different line. Like that, like you've got the ability maybe a Degoe, but again got the bye Isaac Heaney. Like the only one I can think about Petrarca going to is if you've got a loophole option and go down to Himmelberg and make that 120k back, and then have a look at your options in 2-3 weeks. There's literally nothing else that I like about Petrarca, where it's just at the point of keeping him. Butters, again, and we sort of talked a bit about this before, about the idea of a Himmelberg, just for the cash. Like the more and more I think about it and just that role, I'm willing to take the risk at 482. Hopefully you've got a little bit of cash. You could possibly get up to a Canelio or a Cameron. You can, like Heaney, I'm not as strong on, but they do have some soft games coming up. So he has pretty well bottomed out in price. 449. It's got that break even 111. So you might have to pick him up for another 10, 15k cheaper. But they do have the Bombers, the Crows, GWS, North Melbourne coming up. So they have some good games there for Heaney. So one to look at, and unfortunately does have the bye, but Degoe's always got to be considered, but I just don't like his year. I don't like his role. I'd probably prefer Lipinski over him, and that's why I guess the thought of Duncan there with the break even of 61 that's been brought up, because he had that 117. So yeah, if I had to and I had to rate them, I'd go Himmelberg 1, and it's such a tough one because you want people that are lower just in case people don't have the cash. It's I really don't. Probably Heaney 2, and let's go, just because they're playing this week, maybe a Tex Walker to really throw left field, and I really don't like it. I don't like it depending on where you're ranked again. If you're ranked low, like way back, then yeah, why not? To Brody's an easier one. Hopefully you've got the cash to get up to one of the doggies. So in a perfect world, you want to get up to English Bond. But if you can't, then it's Parker or Libba. I'm taking Parker first. If not, if you've already got him, then it's Libba. In a perfect world, I'd still want to keep him. And lucky last was Jaden Short in the back line. I don't know why you want to trade Shorty. Like, he's still got that mid. He's around the ball in the midfield. Yes, he's not scoring as well as he was, but he's still got a 3-game average of 99. Like, it's not terrible. 530, like in a perfect world, you want to go up to Dawson. But again, if you don't have the cash, some of the options aren't great. We're talking about this. The perfect option is Aaron Hall, because no one will own him, but you can't get him in this week. Perfect world, if you were thinking about side swapping, and that's the way you wanted to go, you could possibly go Jaden Short, plays this week. He has a... Where is he here? My phone decides to stop working at the wrong time. Oh, well, that's not going to work, unfortunately. Jaden Short, where are we here? as I go over to the computer. I apologise for this delay. Break even of 120. So in a perfect world, you hope he scores 100. He only drops 9k. Him down to Aaron Hall the following week makes 25,000. That might be the side swapping move if you really wanted to go down that way. Like Hall, as I talked about with Ben before, back doing exactly what he does normally. Calls for the ball out of position, but just racks them up at will, and that North Melbourne defence is going to see plenty of ball. Really love the question, Cliffo. What else have we got here? There's more questions that are actually coming in as we're live recording. And we've got... Apologise as I keep flicking between both things. One more on the Gawn topic. Would you take Witts or English, knowing that Cameron will also need to be traded in a month or so once Grundy comes back? So we'll likely end up with both. Who do you like best over the next 4 to 5 weeks? I'm a bigger fan on Witts personally, but I can definitely see why people would want to get in English, just because Sol Ruck has just been absolutely killing it this year. Did have that sort of game, but it'll be interesting to see sort of what matchup he has this week. If Bruce comes in, do I like that as much? Not as much, but I don't think it matters that much for English. The Hawks the following week. But then they've got Brisbane and Sydney. The big thing there is they're away both weeks. There's a Ruck travelling around. So they've got 3 away games in 4 matches. And then they come home stronger. They've got then Marvel, Geelong, Marvel. So if I'm looking at their English, if I had the choice, I'd probably wait the 2 or 3 other, what did you say, Cliff, for 4 weeks to get him in then. Where Witts, though I think Witts' break even is, it's 121, so it's still very doable. Witts coming up this week has the Crows, Port possibly with Finlayson, or it'll be maybe even Teagle rucking. That's a good matchup. Collingwood, it's Darcy Cameron. Richmond, you've got, and those 3 of those 4 games are up at Metricon, so you've got Nankervis. Then it's back down to Marvel for against Draper. So no, I think Witts is the better option for the next 4 to 5 weeks, and then Timmy English after that. And in saying that, now that I've said that, it's going to be the complete opposite. To Brandon, Merritt and Doc or Dawson or Mills. Merritt, Doc or Dawson, or Mills and Whitfield. Oh, wow. Because I do much prefer Dawson. And naturally, I'm a big fan of Doc, but then with Merritt or Mills is your number 1 option, but I just don't trust Whitfield, so I'll go Merritt and Dawson just because of the fixture coming home. The Supercoach, Himmelberg, yeah or nay, we've answered that. Yes, Himmelberg is a yes. Julie, need 4 trades to do what I want. Will T. Stewart get his break even? I don't think he will because it's something ridiculous. Where are we there? Tommy Stewart. Break even of 137, and then that'll even be higher the following week. And then will Bruce play? Ben thinks so. I think if he does, there's a chance that he could share it, but it wouldn't surprise me if they just swap with Plitz. Please provide the best options to maximise points for the best rest of the year. Big ask. I trust your judgment better than mine. What are you boys planning? That's why I'm big on the Jeremy Cameron move down back. If you want the Ruck, you're looking at Witts. Then you want English. If you want your defender, if you can afford Stewart, it's definitely going to be Stewart. Otherwise, then we're both on Doherty and Dawson. Really like Dawson's draw, like everything about Adelaide's fixture, so that's why we're really big on Dawson there. Joy, I wish I saved the boost for this round. Yeah, I think a few people are thinking that. To Isaac, can go Stewart and Laird in for Witho and Track. Side is completed. Time for some luxury trades. What do you think of those moves? I'm a fan of getting 2 top players in their positions. Absolutely 100%. I've got no issue with that. Harrison says, I'm going to wait for Stewart. After the Richmond game, he'll be 50k cheaper. Now, that is true, but this comes down to points on field. Do you think, well, it's a hard one because there's going to be a lot of ball in the West Coast backline, especially if Geelong starts spraying the ball with it, and it's going to have a few kickouts there. So he could go really big this week. and then that's all obviously awesome for him. And then Stewart drops money. The problem is if West Coast hack the ball forward, Stewart's just going to have a field day. So do you want is the 50k worth it for your team going forward, or would you rather the points on field? If you're playing for rankings, you want the points on field, unless that 50k is going to massively change anything, and by the sound of it, your team's up to date anyway. To Corey, should I trade in Bontempelli, Libba or Laird, as I need 2 premiums left but can't get the 2 this week, as brought in Bruce to gone last. Just need to climb rankings again with 38k and have a fun team to the end of the year. Laird, mate. And then I'd go, you could cost a coin, but so I think I said cost a coin there, but toss a coin. But I still like Bont's naturally the better player than Lib. It's just that, how's he come back from that niggle that he's had? So I'd go Laird 1, Bont 2, Libba 3. And to Magic Gnome, thought on trading Cogs back in this week. Where does he rank amongst the forwards now with his better role, excluding Bailey Smith and Darcy Cameron? Too late now, I imagine, for Darcy Cameron. Yes, too late for Darcy Cameron, because obviously Gawn will be back soon. It all comes down depending on your price there. You want English, you want Bont, Lukey Parker. I'm gathering you can have Dunkley, but if you don't, and money's an issue, $4.98. If you don't have that, what we're talking about, Cameron's 9k cheaper, I think, and that. So, if you're sort of side swapping and that was that question before about Cliffo, about side swapping, and you're looking at going Brody to someone, while Cornelio's definitely there. The break even of 29, he's going to smash that. Playing the Dogs, playing the midfield. So, I've got no issues with the option at all. It's a great role. McVeigh's back in your min. So, I've got no issue if people want to bring Cogs back in. As I said, I just think if you've got the more money, Bont and English are naturally the better options. But a lot of the top teams are going to have Cornelio, so may as well. I think he's still in. What's he in here? 59% of teams. So most of the teams have him in anyway. So again, just to expand on that, it depends on where you are with it. Like Cornelio's going to go really well. If you're bringing him in, then all you're doing is equaling the points that the teams above you have. So it's great for leagues because, that just null and voids that matchup. And if you're ranked high up, well, that's fine because, it just keeps you on par. If you're further back, well, do you roll the dice and then go, okay, we're going to go someone different, like, as I said, a Cameron or, a Tex or someone random like that, and hope Cornelio has a couple of his bad weeks. And one of those guys, let's just say Cornelio had a 60 and then Tex comes out with a 150 and all of a sudden you're 90 points up in the rest of the competition. And that's the risk that people took last week with Himmelberg. 300 and so people brought in Himmelberg. He goes 187. No one has him. And I'm bringing a merit. Those people are 90 points up ahead of me, and that's where they make up on the rankings. And those ranking points, it can literally be 100, 200 points, and you move up, 2, 3, 4,000 places depending on where you are. So, consider that where you're ranked. And as I said, the further back you're ranked, the more risks you need to take if you want a higher ranking. Because what difference does it make if you're 20,000 and you finish 50,000? And that's even what I said. What was it, about 2-3 years ago when I was sort of in the top 50 and made a couple of moves, fell back to 400-500. But if those moves come off, then you're a chance of actually winning the money or finishing in the top 10. And I'd rather that than okay, great, I finished 50th by staying par with everyone. But I'd rather take the chance of trying to win. But those people who are in that position, if you're top 50, 100, 200, you don't need to make those risks yet. For now, it's just holding firm, staying with the rest of the pack, and then trying to make the move later on. In regards to some footy chat, because a few people have been asking me about this, really good to see. It wasn't a huge crowd, but the 13,000 that turned up to support North Melbourne. I hope the North fans keep coming out. It doesn't look like the Tassie team's going to go forward at the moment. Gill's in charge. I really do hope they reconsider that. I know there's some discussion about it from some fans because the diluted talent. I still think that's more on the recruiters and the development systems. I think there are some good players out there. We do see some of these players come into our system, and they make an impact straight away. Nick Martin being obviously one of the latest ones, Newcomb. So with the right sort of recruiting, and hopefully with another 2 teams, that expands that area, because we probably don't get a lot of recruiting down at Tassie in the Northern Territory. But with those teams set up, there'll be a lot more local players come through their systems, and it does open up those pathways. And not just for the guys, but you would expect the ladies would get a team, and it would actually open opportunities for that. So I'm all for 20 teams. I'm all for none of this relocation of North Melbourne. And I hope their fans can continue to get out there, and that's why I was there, to kind of support them, because I was there for Fitzroy's last game, and I know how hard it's been for supporters, and it's worked out well with those who have kept on the train. But I'm sure deep down they really miss the days of Fitzroy being down here, and that. So it's hard, because you do put your heart and soul into a club and your money, and so I wouldn't want a team to go like that. And I do understand the other arguments to it, but that's kind of my stance on that. I think I covered the Bailey Smith thing. Josh Freiberg's meant to be one of the leading contentions for the new AFL CEO. That's an interesting decision if that's the way it goes ahead. And obviously he knows his way around business, but then AFL's a completely different story. Not that I really want somebody in-house like a Travis Old or someone like that, because I think they need to break away from what Gill's been doing. I don't want to be biased, and I really don't want the Tigers to lose Benny Gill, but somebody who like that, who's been involved in footy, in a perfect world, and I know there's some criticism of this, but like an Eddie Maguire type, but we've obviously the criticism that's come with him, to do with the Do Better report and that, you can. There's obviously some definitely deficiencies there, but you can't not admire like what he's done with the Collingwood Football Club. So, somebody like that, Jeff not as much, but there's definitely some people in the footy circles that have been really good and have helped develop their club and develop their game. Kevin Sheedy 20 years ago kind of thing, who can take the league forward with some fresh ideas, both for the men's and women's game, and then you go through into your grassroots and your juniors, and so I think there's definitely, they need somebody from the footy world, but not in-house at the moment, to cover that. And outside of that, I think that's about all that's going on at the moment. So feel free, keep sending out your questions. Supercoach questions, naturally. Teams will be out tomorrow. Ben or Chris might do something around that. I'll be at the footy, naturally, watching the Tigers play the Blues. So it should be a good week of footy. Last week of buys. There is actually that on a footy discussion, a bit about do we get rid of the buys. And I really hope there's a sort of a reconfiguration of that next year. Like, I'd nearly be open to just having the week off, play some sort of marquee game, or even could you make local footy more prevalent for that week? And even like could you do something at the G, or could you do something at Marvel or whatever with these local footy teams? Give them the experience and sort of try to boost that up. I think that would be better. And then you could look at you have your draft. You could do something with the women's game. In a perfect world, the women's would be in season with the AFL, and maybe that's a standalone round, and the ladies have a bye the week before, the week after. So there's things that they could look at there. And then, you could discuss trade periods. I'm not as big on the trade period. I like the mid-season draft, but, we talk about, like, Goldstein gets thrown up every year, but, do I want to see somebody like that plays, half a year and then goes off to another club for like 10 weeks to help them win a flag? I think that's part of your list management. Teams get injuries. You need to be able to cover with that, and I think that's a bit of the mid-season drafts there for. But I'm not as big on about the trading, and then how that works, especially with interstate teams and players that have families. Like you've got players who have, especially the older players that have kids in school. Do they move away for 12 weeks and come back? Do they have to pull their whole family out? How long's their contract? Do they see the rest of the contract? I think there's too many question marks around that. Out of season, I think there should be more, open for trading around players' contracts and that. I think the players have too much power, and it won't change with the way sort of Dangerfield and the Players Association works. But yeah, I would like to see more around that. And furthermore, naturally, I think clubs and even the AFL have been sending out some surveys around crowds and reasons why you may not be going to the footy. There's been a lot of discussion about umpires and the rules and that. So yeah, there's a few areas the games need to fix as well. So yeah, there's some interesting topics going around about footy at the moment. Horn Francis was in the news again today. He's in the news every day. I did say last year, I know I got a bit of criticism with North fans about, the idea that you bid on Dacos and even Darcy just to take the heat off Horn Francis. There's always going to be some of the heat, but I always find the scrutiny on picks ones are way more than any other pick. Like, I had to actually look up again to see who went 2 and 3. Like, it was Darcy and Callaghan. Completely, absolutely forgot that they went 2 and 3. It's like a few years ago when, McCluggage and Taranto went 2. Well, it was actually the other way around. Taranto and McCluggage went 2-3. I think that was the McGrath year. Like, the discussions around those those picks 2 and 3 are nowhere near pick 1. So unfortunately, yeah, it's a bit of that the situation where North find themselves in because they did take that pick 1 selection. It'll be interesting to see teams this year. Like, we're talking about West Coast Essendon and what the Eagles and how they'll play it out. Most teams want to avoid the spoon, but yeah, how much do they want the number 1 pick for the best player? But sometimes is the best player the way to go? Ashcroft's meant to be up there this year, who may nominate for father-son for Brisbane. If he does, do you bid on him so you don't have to worry about number 1, put the pressure back on another club, which in this case would be Brisbane. So yeah, there's a lot of discussion. The media doesn't need to go as strong, but at the same time, unfortunately, they're in a professional world and there's a lot of people watching the game and we've all got our heart and soul in it. So yeah, that's always going to happen. And so these clubs, I think, need to be better or about managing this, and I don't think there's been enough discussion around it. But also in saying that, I don't think the number 1s are the great white hope that everybody talks about. The difference between pick 1 and pick 4 is minimal. As we said, the focus goes all on number 1 to come in and save that club, where number 2, 3, 4 just continues to develop. And I know that they were talking about that in one of the podcasts the other day about, say, Mitch Lewis. I think it was Nat Edwards saying, what did he go pick 76? No focus on him at all compared to, say, a Jamara, and he's just managed to develop at his own pace and now looks very settled in that Hawthorn forward line. So yeah, it's always interesting with the draft and how that works. But yeah, just a bit of food for thought, a bit of footy discussion. Thanks to those people who actually reached out and said, yeah, I wouldn't mind hearing a bit of footy chat. So that's just my opinion. Everyone's getting a different opinion. Happy to hear your opinion on it. And yeah, all the best super coaching this weekend. As I said to Benny Boy before, captains, vice captains, you're looking at Laird or Took as your captain. I don't like captains usually on the Sunday game, but they seem to be the safest option. Paddy Cripps, vice captain, or you want to take a chance on somebody who's playing. If you've got a Geelong player, perfect world against the Weagles, you could definitely get on a Stewart or a Hawkins type. Sinclair also, or Doherty against the respective teams there against Richmond and Essendon might be a good one, especially Sinclair. Could be a nice little shout as a vice captain as well. Or if you have Mills, he is a good option against Port, but I did talk about that with Ben going, depends who their ruck is. If it's Teakle, well then Port will play 3-on-3 for the clearances. If they ruck Finlayson, well then it'll be a 4-on-3 clearance situation, and the Swans should set up like we did last week and have that 7th man back to try to take the intercept mark. And then you've got McRae naturally against the GWS. So I don't think he'll be the one getting any attention. Those games are usually pretty fiery. McRae for the first time has let us down a few times this year. So, but yeah, in a perfect world, because we've got the emergencies with the bye players, you could go McRae into a Tuku or Laird as another option as well. So there's plenty of options there. And yeah, happy super coaching everybody. Good luck.